everyone, welcome back to the land of low friction, and today will be for real a short video for me. This one's just going to be ripping through some updates on a bunch of topics just to get that covered, and I actually have a really pretty short span of time to try to pump this one out because this week's going pretty nuts. All right, I'll be talking about a new immersive wax that is about to be launched, and been fairly heavily involved with this company testing for that one. So be excited to talk about that, and you'll be able to see if that is a great option for you. And it may be an option for you, especially in certain parts of the world where traditionally it's been harder or more expensive to get hold of molten speed wax and hot melt. I'm going to sort of segue from that as well into talking about the DIY waxing. I just want to clarify what sort of mine and ZFC stance is on DIY waxing, and why to date I haven't tested the things like your candle wax and golf canning wax, such as the golf canning wax. Forgive my trouble speaking at this time of the afternoon. It's almost nap time. A bit of a testing update because it's always really flat out on the testing side as well as all other parts, and I have been struggling to get to some proper updates. I'm going to whiz through a couple of things there, and also some, information has changed a little bit since I did the first video on 12-speed chain compatibility and just some data and information on chains. So I need to do a bit of an update on 12-speed just chain compatibility and recommendations versus the first video, because some of that information is now a little bit dated. So I'll be ripping into that. Okay, coming to market very soon is going to be the new immersive wax out from Rex. So if you've been following ZFC for a bit, you'll know that I've been doing some testing for a long time with Rex. I've tested their Black Diamond drip lubricant, as well as the Black Diamond plus their race day spray or race day drip, and their domestique. In amongst that, we've been doing testing for a long time with them on various iterations of their immersive wax. So this has been going on for a fair while, and so I've tested quite a number of formulas that they've been sending over the last really pretty much 18 months that we've been had a test machine fairly exclusively tied up. Actually, it has been 100% exclusively tied up for Rex for all that time, just testing blend after blend after blend, from sort of one base wax to another base wax to another base wax, and then adding in the modifiers, which I can't say what the modifier block contains. And what's really interesting, so you may see with this particular lovely packaging there, so they are selling the wax in a little bit of a different format, where they're selling it as base blocks and then you have a modifier block. And so certainly to a degree you will be able to sort of tailor your wax blend by how many base blocks versus sort of modifier block that you put in. And so if you put in a high concentration, that has some advantages for certain types of cycling, whereas for a lot of cycling you don't need as high. You can sort of include the modifier block within all base blocks, and that gives you still absolutely plenty of modifier for a pretty super wax. They've taken some of the test data. This is sort of just probably one of the graphs that they'll go to launch with. So a little bit similar to with the Black Diamond drip lubricant, which is really by far the longest treatment lifespan of a drip lubricant that we've tested, especially in the dry conditions. That sort of strength is really carrying over into the immersive wax as well. So this is quite possibly where this wax may appeal to some over the top of others, with regards to it just has a really long treatment lifespan. So really just for a long time throughout the testing, I would just sort of check measuring interval after interval after interval after interval, and there's just nowhere occurring until a certain point where it finally starts to sort of show that some actual wear is occurring because the wax treatment is done. So it's been really interesting to work with. Rex has obviously done all the actual hard work. They've been the ones developing the base wax and the final product, and I've just been checking it along the way. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to just be involved in that and see how things have progressed from the first base blend that we tested about a year and a half ago through to where it is now. And this is, I guess, an interesting time as well. So I will be leading in from this is from the Rex Wax into, I guess the differences really that you get from a wax that has a lot of R&D behind it and some sort of special stuff in the not only the actual modifier but also in the base blend versus what can occur in the world of DIY waxing and really what differences you can expect sort of from one path to another. But whilst I'm here, so yeah, just really, this is going to be, I think, a really groovy product to come onto the market, really joining, the top options that we already have with molten speed wax and the Silka hot melt. I like that there's a little bit of a differentiator there where people can tailor the blend, and the test data is up on the website. The one that's uploaded as I am voicing this little video may still have this blacked out, but very, very soon the two black lines that are on the website will become these, and depending on what you sort it by will sort of depend on how well it ranks against MSW and hot melt. Overall, it's still, these four are really taking the the four top spots in the lowest wear products ever tested. Again, immersive waxes just have that really unassailable advantage over drip lubricants, where each rewax does do a pretty brilliant reset of contamination that gets into the chain and recoats the chain with a new fresh coating of solid super slippery wax. So again, it's really the top immersive waxes that are sort of taking the top spots on the league table. But there are some differences sort of if we sort of sort via dry or wet. Really, the part where the black diamond is differentiating itself as really in the against MSW or hot melt. Again, apologies for my ability this afternoon to put words together in an actual sentence. It's really in the longevity. The treatment longevity is just really quite a bit higher in the dry conditions. So the modifier that I have in there is really helping with that the longevity per treatment of that wax. And so again, for some that's going to really suit. And depending on where you're located, so I mean this product will be obviously stocked by Zero Friction Cycling. So for people in Australia, it'll be it's going to be a little bit more expensive than both MSW and hot melt. It's just a little bit more expensive product due to the modifier that's in there. However, in Europe, it may work out due to the typically greater cost to get MSW and hot melt in and across to Europe. Being that Rex are based in, pretty sure it's Finland. Sorry, memory fade again. That may work out, by the time you factor in shipping, a very similar price to, or depending on where you are, possibly a little bit cheaper than MSW or hot melt. So it'll just be something that if you're in Europe and you've been a little bit, you've had a look at molten speed wax or hot melt before, but not pulled the trigger because of the sort of the landed cost, despite what it will typically save you in wear life and savings on your components. Have a look at the cost for Rex when that comes out, and just see if that sort of gets that over the line for you if you're pondering a immersive wax path but hadn't yet, just due to landed cost at your door. Okay, so linking back to DIY waxing. So I think over time, possibly my messaging on DIY waxing, so do I sort of support it or completely against it? I think a combination of I've not communicated that well, or I've communicated it averagely, and some have sort of maybe misunderstood, or a combination of those two. Alrighty, so the trouble is, let's see how I go getting this out without it being an absolute horrible rambling mess. Part of the problem with the DIY waxing is that it's just so variant. So you're going to get one person who's going to get some candles, and then they're going to add some paraffin oil or some beeswax or some lanolin. They're going to add 5 grams of PTFE, or they're going to add 50 grams of PTFE. They may be adding moly or WS2 or both. Or now people are getting various types of graphene. And there is just every type of and sort of grade of base wax out there, from candles to cheap paraffin, which is going to have a pretty high oil content, to food grade paraffin. But even within that, there are a lot of different sort of hardness and softness grades, so that the wax may be quite soft or it might be quite brittle. We've got people that are adding the paraffin oil to soften it up because they don't like the dry feel of a solid wax, or it may be that they got a particularly sort of brittle paraffin, and so that was not pleasurable to ride. On and on and on. And so where it also can sometimes, so when DI waxing turns out to be sometimes not great, if it's a really gunky wax like a candles or a really cheap oily paraffin, is that what sometimes mechanics can see coming through their workshop is a drivetrain that's really gunked up so much that it's not shifting gears well, or it won't shift into the smallest cogs, which get gunked up the worst. And they will just think, far out, what are these people that are doing immersive waxing? They are batshit crazy. This stuff's terrible. Like, who would go through all the extra effort, even though it's not much at all, but they think it is, of immersive waxing to end up with that? Like, that is really bad. So I guess there's that part of it where sometimes where it comes out not great. It sort of doesn't give immersive waxing a very good reputation, both with some mechanics and also with possibly your cycling friends. If your drivetrain looks like a gunked up mess, people in your cycling sort of circle are not going to think, yeah, that immersive waxing, that looks like the shit, I'm going to get on that. So there is that part of it. Now, yes, it can be done really well. So if you've got really, it's all about the base. So I've sort of highlighted this a bit in my key learnings on, I guess from our testing, is that if the base is crap, it doesn't really matter what you add to it. It's going to be crap. It's just putting sort of lipstick on a pig. So the base wax is critical. So don't cheap out on the paraffin. Don't use candles. Candles are terrible. Candles will often have other sort of stuff in there like soy and palm oil, which just gets gunky and it's slow. But if you've got a really good base wax like a food grade paraffin, which is going to be quite refined, and if you get one that's not too hard, which will give you a really dry and short lifespan, so dry feel short lifespan. If it's too soft, it may, again, too soft can often lead to quite a short treatment lifespan as well. But if you get one, so the typical base standard that we recommend is golf canning wax. That's a really good one. And so if DIY waxing is done, well, or at least even moderately, then it's a really good option for a lot of people who are thinking about waxing, but for whatever reason, it usually costs, I think, I'm not paying X to get, molten speed wax or hot melt, I'm going to do that myself. And that is cool. You can, if you do it well or even moderately well, you will still get an outcome that will beat the pants off most of the stuff that is sold to you from a local bike store, or that is prevalent online from a lot of the big brands that from our testing and and others seem to be really not great stuff. So a lot of the stuff you see from, say, your Muck Off and your Finish Line and so on, if you couldn't beat those products in terms of your drivetrain cleanliness and drivetrain wear rates by doing a moderately okay job with your own home blend immersive wax, I would be surprised. So if it's done well, fantastic. If it's done poorly, just have a look at doing it better. If you've got a gunky mess, it can be a lot better. Just have a look at, I guess, the images and things from the molten speed wax test that we've done. We've got that on the homepage. We've got that in the detail review. If it's looking kind of like that, then awesome. Other differences that come in DIY waxing is, so now there's nothing really wrong if this is the way you want to go. If you want to add paraffin oil or lanolin or beeswax, something to make it feel softer and smoother. So some that have written in saying what their blend is, so they do this to make it what they call more smeary or something similar to that because they like that more damped feel. That's cool. But just know that, so for those that are doing that are racing, what they're doing is you are making it slower. So by adding this stuff, apart from the fact that obviously if it gets wet to a certain point, like with the paraffin oil, then you will get dust sticking on contact just like you really would with a wet lubricant. So you really want to stay away from that side, because once you get it to something like that, you're really negating one of the big advantages of running, a proper immersive wax chain, which is that you've got this, solid, super slippery lubricant on there. Now, part of why your really good paraffin-based immersive waxes test so fast and efficient, and really what started this, I guess, whole sort of train right back from the friction wax days when Jason Smith discovered this, is that, so the right grade of paraffin, for those that sort of have any knowledge with the immersive waxing, you will know that when you first take it out of the pot and you hang it to set, it sets pretty solid. You've got to break the link bond on the links, and then when you first install it on your bike, it'll be really stiff, and it takes a few minutes for it to free up. Your shifting can be a little bit compromised because it's really stiff. But once that chain has been, I guess, had a few minutes riding, it's all fine, usually from a shifting perspective, and you don't really notice things. After sort of around the 20-30 minutes, depending on the wax blend and temperature, things like that, your really top paraffin base immersive waxes, what's happening is that the coating that you have on the parts inside your chain, which are taking all the load and that you need to move really freely, that paraffin self-polishes to a really lovely sheen. So you've just got this solid, super slippery wax that has the lowest stiction, because link parts need to get moving from static to articulate and reticulate back so many times per minute. You've literally got around 300,000 separate pieces of sliding surface friction in your chain per minute if you're riding at 90 cadence in the big ring. So you've got this lower stiction because you've got these sort of polished wax parts, and you've got zero viscous friction. So that's what really makes your top waxes, that's what gets them from being, say, a 5-watt lubricant down to a 4-watt lubricant, or down to a 3-watt lubricant. Once you start adding stuff to make it softer and more, smeary or whatever it may be, you are slowing that down. So for those that are doing their DIY waxing and adding paraffin oil and all this other stuff, and using candles, which will likely have soy and palm oil and so on, it's not fast. So I don't have watts loss figures. I don't have those, directly sort of from Ceramic Speed or Jason Smith in the Friction Facts days, although I know he did do some testing on them, and he did report that it is slow. And it's sort of all lines up with just the basic sort of physics and logic of what we ran through there, that they will be, slower to slow. So it could be still a fine lubricant for you if you're just, training and your aim is to get pretty low wear rates, which you're going to get via doing even a moderate job of DIY waxing. However, if it is for your race chain, then a DIY blend with that sort of stuff in it, and a cheap wax base, it's going to be slow compared to your top waxes, probably by around the couple of watt mark minimum. All right, last point on that before I talk about the testing and why we haven't done it yet and where we're at with it. The other big difference really that we find between, say, a DIY wax and the top waxes really is that sort of treatment lifespan, both from a feel and an actual, longevity of protection. So the additives that you get in the top waxes, what they do when that wax layer is running really thin, so if you're pushing the treatment a bit, they add a lot of protection before the wear starts to kick in. And this is really one sort of linking this to the Rex. This was seen so well with the Rex testing, where there were some times where, depending on the base wax that we're using, some of the bases were a bit too brittle, and they were going dry, sort of fairly quickly. And the chain, even on the test machine, so even without the field test side of it, but on the test machine, fairly quickly it would just sound very loud, very dry. It's like, okay, we're not getting really any wear coming through, but wow, you would probably find that quite unpleasurable to ride with it being like that. So the modifiers are really protecting the chain from wear, even though it sort of would be pretty horribly dry to ride. That protection is stuff that you don't get with if your sort of home DIY wax is not as flash, where by the time it starts to sound dry, it may well also be sort of wearing quite a lot more quickly than what it was when it was earlier in its treatment lifespan. So, and we do see this a lot, both lab, I don't actually have a lab, so to speak, but in the workshop control testing and in-field testing, you do have a lot more protection from wear with the top waxes as opposed to what you would commonly get with DIY wax. A lot of DIY wax people are guessing on how much to add. What's the quality of the stuff that they're getting? Is it the same, sort of particle size or platelet size, and quality as to what is being included in the top waxes. So now, depending on budget and so on, may or may not care, you might be really happy with your stuff. And that is cool. The main thing has always been, if you're happy with your DIY wax, don't get put out that there's, an MSW or a hot melt out there. Don't be insecure and think, I really want to know. I'm going to email ZFC to say, I need you to test this particular DIY blend that I'm doing because I want to know how it compares to MSW and hot melt. If you're happy, stay happy. So that's one part that I've hopefully covered off, making some sense. I'm feeling very strange this afternoon trying to actually talk through sentences. All right, the other part is the testing. So over time, we sort of get more and more requests about, love to just see, like, why haven't you tested, say like candle wax or cheap paraffin, and the canning wax, which is going to be a much higher quality base, versus MSW and hot melt. And the main reason is literally just time and priority of resources. So we are absolutely flat out booked with testing. As I am airing this or recording this at the moment, I am really far behind on testing for a number of manufacturers, and I'm trying to get some testing of my own volition and curiosity that are going to help sort of build out the quality of the league table for us all. So, like at the moment, I have on test finish line dry because I want to get another finish line test in, and that is a commonly recommended one from bike shops. And we're also getting the at the moment the Hot Wax X tested, and I have actually kicked off testing of the candle wax. So trying to squeeze that in after we finished the test of, or recently done, the Bow Shield T9 as an aerosol test. We've done the Presticycle 1, which has had the craziest sort of claims and info about testing that I've seen, and the Finish Line Ceramic. So, getting those sort of tests done to help build out the knowledge of the league table to compare it to the top stuff that we're, getting in and seeing from the manufacturers is a big part. Testing for the gap between, say, candles and canning wax and MSW and hot melt has just been a much lower priority because at the end of the day, there is a segment, immersive waxing is by no means, hopefully fairly clearly, all of what ZFC does, nor is it all of what ZFC recommends for people to use, or what we sell and offer. So there is a segment of, cycling people focusing in this fun little area that we do that will be immersive waxes. Within that, there will be a percentage that are DIY wax. Within that DIY wax, we have a never ever ending stream of types and blends and combinations that are emailed in to be tested. So aside from the fact that even sort of testing, I guess, candle wax, and not all candle waxes are the same either. I have picked one and we've got that, and we'll see how that goes, but different candle waxes have all sorts of different stuff in there. So this will be a representation, but by no means definitive of one versus another. And the Golf canning wax will be representative of one canning wax. So that will be cool, but I'm talking to now what is a sort of a subset of a subset. So it's just a really low priority. And within that sort of subset of subset, this particular subset, it's pretty much, I guess, never ending in terms of what they're going to want tested, because what I get emailed all the time to test is, it is just always, again, it is just like this plus this plus this plus this is my blend. I want to see this. So I guess it will give us some cool information. It will be cool to see what is the difference between the candle wax and MSW, and golf canning wax and MSW and hot melt. So I'm trying to push those through and get those done. It has just simply been, they have been so much lower priority as opposed to all the other tests that we're doing, and as opposed to all the other tests that I have lined up that I'm trying to actually get through. But I'm going to try to push them through, just because at the end of the day, I guess it is time. The requests have been received now over quite a number of years, so it's time. We'll try to get it done. Sorry, almost forgot to mention one thing that does come up a lot, and I really just want to hammer this home. Do not add 50 grams of PTFE per pound for your home blend, please. That, I believe, came from Oz Cycles, rather, I'm going to unfortunately say not great sort of video on his DIY wax and his very, very flawed and bias test of his DIY wax blend versus M-Speed wax. I could go on for a fair bit on that, but I have a document on the website, so instructions tab, that OzCycle video. If you are interested, you can have a read through that as to the mistakes that he made, which were pretty glaring with regards to his test of his own home blend versus M-Speed wax, and why the whole test and wear measures and so on were invalid. Within his that DIY blend, though, he does state to use 50 grams of PTFE. I have no idea where 50 grams of PTFE per pound came from. The original formula for UFO, which was developed by Jason Smith back in the Friction Facts and kicking off the race chain days with UFO chains, it was 5 grams of PTFE per pound. Either he's misremembered, or as best as I can tell, he's pulled 50 grams out of his butt to cover the base of adding PTFE to the wax blend. I have seen, and I cannot figure out anything where there's any actual basis as to where he's arrived at 50 grams, because that is a really wasteful amount, pretty nuts amount of PTFE to add per pound. MSW, UFO used to be 5, and they've all moved away from PTFE. Hot Melt does not have PTFE. Rex does not have PTFE. So really, there hasn't really been a top, sort of new lubricant in the space for a fair while that has included PTFE. Really, the industry is moving away from that for really a lot of good reasons from the environmental standpoint. A lot of places are trying to move away from these forever chemicals like the PFAS, which PTFE is, and the manufacture of PTFE is not great environmentally. So no one's really moving down. I can't think of anybody who's looking to come out with, a latest gen lube that is going and using PTFE as one of the key friction modifiers in that product. Things have moved on, and sort of thankfully so. Same as why we're not really seeing lubricants coming out with sort of harsh volatile solvents. That things have moved on from that time. So if you are DIY waxing and you are following OzCycle's recommendation of 50 grams per PTFE, please stop. And for other reasons I'll cover another time, have a look at why you maybe shouldn't follow that channel, because he's just not I won't say not a good guy, but anyway. Alrighty, just moving on to some updated information really from with regards to the 12-speed chains and some compatibility recommendations. Just updating really from episode 10, where I did the first video going back a ways with regards to that. The main change I'm going to be sort of focusing on is really with regards to the Shimano 12-speed. At the time, I had stated that it was really my belief that was the best chain overall on the market, because I believed it was going to be very fast, based on the fact that the 11-speed Dura-Ace had always been very fast, and that it had been intimated that there really wasn't a change to that. But there had been quite a large improvement with its wear longevity, which I tested that to be true. It's e-bike rated. It's got the Hyperglide Plus shifting for the Shimano system, so it's kind of all singing, all dancing. And for compatible systems, then I had recommended that was really sort of the top chain on the market. There were some caveats, though, that the extended inner plate links as part of Hyperglide Plus shifting may cause some issues, so you did need to have a Shimano 12-speed compatible chainring or chain rings. And if you were running it on, say, SRAM Eagle mountain bike cassettes, it's possible that those extended inner plate links may rub on the sides of the teeth in the largest cogs once it gets onto a chainline angle, things like that. However, if it worked and you had a 12-speed compatible ring, then it was possibly a good option for you as a race chain over the not so fast Eagle chains. However, so since that time, we have managed to get the efficiency test results, and they were not as fast as had been expected. So it's still it's not terrible. It's certainly not slow. However, it's definitely not as fast as the Dura-Ace 11-speed chain, and really it is not any quicker than a SRAM Axis flat top for the road system. They're force level chains, so they're pretty much a match. So you may see that, yes, there's a bit of a difference between that and the SRAM Access Road red level chain. So it's a little bit faster than that. However, and yes, it is odd that force level is faster than red level. SRAM are doing something a little bit odd on that front. But yes, we can see, however, that there's not an advantage to running a Shimano chain over a Axis Force chain. And this one's, I've moved this little update up the list today because I've had a really fun argument with a mechanic who's been commenting on that particular episode. Is having a bit of a shot at me for not actively basically driving the Shimano chains onto SRAM Axis Road drivetrains. And, because in the video I am recommending, obviously, that that really shouldn't be done. It's a different standard, and even if there was a clear speed difference between the Shimano chain and the SRAM, I would not be recommending that. Same as I personally don't actively recommend running the YBN, which is really the same standard as the Shimano, just without the extended inner plate links, but it's the same 11x128 chain standard. I don't recommend that in general for the SRAM Axis Road system either, because they are a completely different standard. So the main trouble, the main risks are, number one, the SRAM Axis Road system, and similar with the Flat Top Explore system that they have, the chains are a lot thinner. So their 12-speed road chains and Explore chains they're a lot thinner than your other 12-speed 11x128 standard chains, like your Eagle, like your YBN SLA 12, and also like your Shimano 12-speed. By making them very thin, they have increased the height of the chain to ensure there's sufficient metal, to reach the tensile strength that they need to reach. By making the chain taller, they've needed to have oversized rollers, so they're 7.9mm diameter rollers as opposed to the more standard 7.7. So the cassette teeth and the chainring teeth are profiled for this much thinner and much larger roller chain than your other 12-speed chains. So when you run another 12-speed chain on a SRAM Axis Road flat top system, to the chain, the cassette and the ring will look very worn. And we do know, and it happens every year, that people who put new chains onto worn cassettes or worn chain rings, the chains can jump under load. Now, if that happens at the chainring end under stand-up power, that can end in a significant emotional event. It is, people collapse down onto the handlebars, go over the bars, and have a hot date with the asphalt, things like that. And if that happens in a crit race, it is not uber awesome for anybody in and around that particular cyclist. The other thing as well, because this chain is quite a bit thinner than your YBN 12, your Eagle, and your Shimano chains, which are very similar external widths. The road flat top chains are pretty much about 0.3mm thinner, which is a lot once we're starting to talk down at these widths. The SRAM Axis Road and Explore cassettes are, the cog spacing is for this width chain. It is not for the wider chain. So already with 12-speed, cog, I guess your gear indexing has to be very spot on. If anything's a little bit out, such as you've got a hanger that's slightly out of misalignment or the tune is just slightly out, already things need to be pretty spot on to ensure that there's not, that your shifting isn't out, or that you don't have an annoying tick, tick, tick in some gears because the chain is just starting to want to catch the next cog. Any potential issues are going to be greatly exacerbated if you put a notably wider chain onto that system. It can work, so definitely there are reports where people run a YBN chain for speed on their Axis Road or Explore drivetrains, or similarly with Shimano. It can be they put the Shimano chain on and all is super. So if that's worked for you, then that's fine. However, it is definitely just not something that I would take a stance on recommending that you should do that, because it's not like the difference between, say, when things went from 10 speed to 11 speed and people are thinking, my 10 speed chainring is going to be okay to go onto an 11 speed chain, or vice versa. It's the same standard chain. They were still an 11x128 standard. There was a very minor difference between, say, the spacings on the chain rings that were, most people had zero issues or would never notice running the difference between. In this particular case, we have a completely different standard chain, and that the cassettes and chain rings are profiled for that. So there are definite risks, both to possible impact with your shifting if the indexing is not absolutely perfect, but more importantly to things potentially jumping under high load, because to the the YBN or the Eagle chain or the Shimano chain, an Axis flat top cassette or chain rings are going to look like they are quite worn components. A lot of the reports are, look, I've put it on and I've run it for X thousands of kilometers and all is super, and that's, again, it's fine, but does that mean that you have the same safety tolerance on your next chain? A lot of times with most drivetrain systems, if you replace your chain by the 0.5% wear mark, you're going to be hopefully fine to get your next chain on there without having it jump under load. If there's physically a lot less metal there to start with when you put your first chain on, and it was already looking really worn to the chain, and now you've ridden it for, say, 8,000 kilometers and you're going to put your next one on, the risk that you may have an issue on your next chain is going to simply be a lot higher than if you were running the correct standard chain for that system. So it is simply something that whenever I'm asked that, I put that detail to the person so they can make their own risk assessment basically on whether or not they wish to, especially now that we have the information that the Shimano chain and the Force chain are the same speed. Do they want to potentially take those risks for zero benefit, or should they just stay, in this case, with the correct standard for their system? So yeah, it came up. I had a pretty fun argument with a vegan Potter, the vegan, who is a mechanic, and he's had quite a shot at me for not actively recommending people onto the Shimano chain for SRAM Axis Road flat tot system, because yes, according to all of the customers that he has been driving onto that chain, they have been problem free and great shifting. But I don't know why I would be delusional in this case for recommending people stay on the correct system when there is no advantage in any way in going to one that is going to give you some risks. The Force and Red Level Axis chains are also very durable. Obviously shift as per their system design, which I believe is fairly flash. I don't think, I'll be surprised if your Shimano is going to really offer you anything worth those risks over and above the shifting you get with the Axis flat top chain on the flat top system, and you have no speed advantage. So yeah, it was quite interesting that one came up, and we've had quite a fun argument over why I do not actively recommend that. And yeah, if you want some fun, have a read of our conversation on episode 10. But I just wanted to clarify that really, since I guess we've had the efficiency data come in from Ceramic Speed, that there's really not even that sort of speed efficiency advantage for you to go with a Shimano chain on the SRAM system. We do have more that go for the YBN, because the YBN 12 is a really fast chain. So those on the Access system who wish to sort of have a fast race chain and so on may take the risk to put that on. Again, in every single email I've ever sent, I have always advised that that is not my recommendation. However, people do it, people report that it's fine. It's your risk tolerance level. And I don't personally, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't personally believe that that approach is delusional to try to make sure that people are safe and not having some not great issues. Things are going to get even more confusing soon. I'm sure you have probably all seen and heard a bit about the launch of the new XSL Eagle system and the other XX new drivetrain system that SRAM have launched, which is a flat top chain, but it is a new flat top chain, so it is not compatible with SRAM's existing Eagle XX1 chains or any Eagle chains in the lineup. It is not compatible with the existing flat top chain. It is a new flat top chain called T-type. I don't have really much information at all as to what is the difference as to why this isn't compatible with other chains, or why the system isn't. We need to get a bunch more information yet over time on that, so there'll be a future episode on that. But things will be getting more confusing. So even today, we've had another email in today with a I forget which country the person was in, but they are building up a mix match drivetrain of SRAM axis, and they like to mix and match, so they bought themselves a Shimano cassette. So now again, the axis system, the axis flat top chain, it is thinner. The cog spacing on the cassette is thinner to match the chain. So the rear mech is going to index to those cogs. If you put a Shimano cassette on to an axis flat top road system or Explore, the shifting is going to be out immediately because the cog spacing on the Shimano cassette is wider than the cog spacing on your flat top cassette, either Red, Force, Rival or Explore, because it is cog spaced for this chain and the mech's indexed for that. So that mixing and matching, people have been and are continuing to kind of get wrong. So he's going to need to sell that Shimano cassette and get a Red, Rival or Force or Explore cassette. Things are going to get worse with the with all of this. There is a whole bunch. So a lot of channels have already covered this launch really well. I think my sort of personal favourite one at the moment is the Escape Collective. Dave Romanson really covered this launch very well and the pros and cons. Overall, I could waffle on a lot, but overall I like a lot of what SRAM have done and their whole master plan around this particular move, getting rid of the derailleur hanger altogether. But a fair bit is still to be determined as to, I guess, where is this chain going to come out with regards to what we would like to see here. They have not been known for the speed of their chains yet. It'll be very interesting to see how that, if that changes or gets worse or stays about the same. But yeah, the one thing that's going to be fun is going to be the sort of increasing confusion around what is compatible and what is not, because already it's a bit of struggle street in the SRAM system, and this is not going to sort of uber help that. All right, that will do. I was going to do a testing update. I swore that including that, I would be able to keep this one to 30 minutes. Nowhere close. But as I haven't had time, I really apologize for this one. Maybe one of my worst coherent structure and actually making sense. If it's really terrible after I upload, I'm just going to pump this together and upload it. If it's really terrible, I'll delete it and I'm going to try again maybe next week. But I've been just super time crunched lately. I just want to get some updates on those things out, and I'll get another update out hopefully before I go on a couple of weeks leave, just with regards to a whole bunch of testing update stuff, because there's a lot happening there. But despite the fact that I've barely had the power of speech this afternoon and the rush nature of this one, hope it was not too terrible and still informative for you and worth a watch or listen, whichever one you did. So yeah, till the next one. Thanks again as always for watching and sort of subscribing and sharing and all that stuff. And yeah, stay safe and stay low friction. And I'll look forward to catching you on the next video.